Hello friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. This is a little mini-sode. I was recently featured on a friend of mine's podcast. Her name is Vanessa, and she runs a math podcast called Math Therapy. Don't worry, you don't have to do any math, but she talks to people about their math problems. Not like, how do I find X kind of problems, but more like how math or struggling at math has affected people emotionally. So she is awesome. She runs an incredible tutoring company and a math tutoring company, and she just does a really good job on focusing on the importance of education and helping people and knowing how to make learning fun. And I'm obsessed with all of those things, but for Magic. So this is a little tiny segment from the episode, just a few minutes. I talk about math and magic and art and teaching and learning and many other of my favorite things. If you like this little segment, then definitely go check out her podcast called Math Therapy. There's a few episodes out, and again, I will tell you, none of them are really about math. They're really about learning and teaching and being a student and feeling more confident and comfortable. The topic and subject is math, but I think a lot of it applies to magic and learning in general. So yeah, anyways, if you like this little mini clip, then you can go check out my full episode or any of the other 3 episodes. Her podcast is called Math Therapy, but here is the little segment for now. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next Thursday.
So this whole vibe of like, even though you didn't like the kind of like end of this means kind of vibe, you still left feeling like you could do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So let's do a switcheroo and tell me about magic. How did this all happen?
So I've done magic for a very long time, since I was super young.
Okay.
I did random...
Like you were always just interested in magic.
Yeah, my uncle did magic. I sort of fell in love with that. That's the story that people tell me. I don't remember it. It was too early for me. That's how early it was. But I'm pretty sure my uncle got me into magic. I kept doing it a little bit. I did little random shows here and there, if something, but like whoever hires a 12-year-old, that kind of show, right? And then come university, and this might very well played a role in my lack of interest in the depth of math, but when all of my friends in the summer were going to do their math internships or whatever that means, I went and started touring summer camps doing magic, right? So that was when I started doing, I taught workshops, I did camp-wide shows, I did staff shows, and that was another thing that I was sort of succeeding 3 or 2 months out of the year, the 2 months I had off at this other thing, that made me feel, that was another step in the direction of like, yeah, you can do whatever. Like, this is not like so crazy.
I know, because like there's an interesting parallel here, right? Like, so were you like, if I can do magic, I can do whatever?
Not really.
Like, was magic just like, because magic, like, think about the word magic.
Yeah.
It's like literally like
Impossible.
magic.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people say about math. Like, people who can't do math are often like, well, it's just like
It's
magic.
like impossible.
Right?
Yeah,
It's impossible, right?
yeah.
So there's like a very like interesting similarity there.
Yeah. I mean, magic is also very hard. Magic is the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Don't you just like learn
So magic
tricks?
Magic is an art.
Okay.
So like any art form, it's as deep as you choose to make it. So an artist can take a painting and go, here's my painting.
Right.
Or they can slave over their painting for years. The Mona Lisa was first painted as an outline, and then the skeleton, and then the naked body, and then the clothing, and then the... Why? No, but do you know why?
No.
Me neither. But that's the choice of the artist,
right.
and like that's the depth that he's put into it. And I don't know, it seems like a pretty popular painting.
Yeah, people like it.
Right. So I'm not saying that like you need to paint a painting like that, but definitely the relationship between effort and result are pretty tied together. So magic is only as good as I put an effort into it, and I put as much effort as I can, which means it's the hardest thing I've ever done. So I think math and all of the troubles with math have to do with, and I know you feel very similarly, is that one bad teacher, right? And the reason is because I think math is boiled down to the smallest element, is just about teaching and explaining. It's just systems. Like, it's just when this happens, you do this.
Right.
Or when this happens, that means this happens, right?
Like, you're not making anything up.
You're not making anything up. There's no like, oh, well, you have to come up with it. There's none of that. There's just when this happens, you do this. Which means I think math boiled down is really about, in basis, teaching and learning. Because how well I can explain to you and make clear that when A happens, B happens, is how well you'll be able to do it on your own for eternity. We all hear the voice of whoever it was that taught us the thing telling us the thing every time we think of the thing.
Right.
Like that's how we learn stuff. We think back, what did so and so, oh yeah, this is the lesson that I learned in this place, right? So in
That's
math,
true, actually, because I always think that, especially with us tutoring, that like students will often say, like, I remember how you taught me this, or I remember this funny way you used to say that.
So it literally comes down to the quality of the teacher,
Okay, yeah.
which is how effective they are at learning. So I think in math, you are teaching A implies B, B implies C, C implies D. And then innately, the student should understand that A implies D.
Okay, yeah.
Even though it might not be instinctual, if we've gone with each of the step, I now know that A implies
Right.
D. That this means that this is a situation. In magic, in doing a trick, it works exactly the same way, except one of those steps, A implies B, B implies C, C implies D, is a lie. Or at least one of those steps is a lie. And the A implying D is a paradox. Okay? So
Like, explain this more.
I'll give you a great example.
Okay.
So let's say I have a piece of rope. So I say, this is a whole piece of rope. And you say, yes. And I say, I'm going to fold it in half. You say, yes. And I say, I'm going to take the middle. Is this the middle? And you say, yes. And I say, I'm going to cut it. And you say, yes. And I say, I now have 2 ropes. You say, yes. And then I say, whew, it's back together as one rope.
How do they do that?
There's a million different ways.
Right.
The answer to every way that it works is one of those things that I
you didn't
said
do
at
that.
least was a lie.
Like, you didn't do it.
Maybe I didn't cut it. Maybe I didn't hold it by the middle. Maybe I didn't, it's not 1 rope at the end, it's 2, but I'm holding them together. Maybe it's one of those is a lie.
Right.
So the similarity between math and magic is, because math, I think, is about teaching, magic is also about teaching, because I need to make sure that you're convinced of each step of that A implies B, B implies C. If one of those makes you go like, hey, wait a second, right? Like a student scratching their head about like, you just saying like, this means this, and they're like, I don't understand. You're like, oh, just do it. Like, you don't want that, right? You want like, oh, I get it. So there's a little bit of trickery, obviously, because it's a lie, but all of the skills I learned in learning and teaching to people while I was, working with them is the whole A implies B, B implies C, C implies D thing. And you ever teach something to a student and you're like, do you get this? And they're like, yeah. And you're like, no, you don't. I can see it in your face,
see the dead eyes.
Right. That's half of what I do, is making sure you get it, even if I lied, making sure you get it so that when the result comes to be, it's impossible for you because each step
You understood.
made sense. Right.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's such a cool way of thinking about it.
That's the relationship between the two of them for me.